Hello, good afternoon. This is Joanna here, founder of Wounds to Scars and creator of the online course Parenting After Childhood Trauma. Just want to pop in. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining. Just wanted to pop in to say Happy Father's Day and to talk a little bit about some lessons. Good afternoon. There are two people here, but I don't know who you are. I can't see who has joined, but I just wanted to say, oh, hey, Paula, welcome. So I wanted to share some key lessons from my father, but I wanted to say Happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there, and good morning, afternoon for me. And I wanted to say to all the uncles who play father, I want to just recognize you as well. So my name is Joan, as I said, and I'm the founder of Wounds to Scars. I am a counselor, but I also create online courses that can help you move through and work through any kind of emotional trauma, mostly early childhood trauma. And I just want to talk about some key lessons from fathers. Okay, so recently my father and I had a grown-up conversation, and I wrote about it on my blog, and I think that was the title, My Father and I Had a Grown-Up Conversation. And one of the things that taught me was how important communication is, how important it is to communicate, to talk, and to understand you and to share what that looks like. And I also learned that I was responsible for my needs. And how does that work? I have to know what my needs are in order to communicate those to the people that are around me, even to my father. Our grown-up conversation was about a text that he sent me that kind of had me in shock for a couple of days. Not because of what he said, but because of the gap that I felt was there, because I had grown up, but he remembered the teenage me, and I felt the need to communicate who the grown-up Joanna was, and what my life's purpose was, and what my goals were, and how I see myself, positioning myself to live and to use my gifts and my talents, and to use the abilities that God had given me to be a blessing to not only myself and my family, but to people that are around me. And that's what I do as a counselor. I use these gifts to help people break free from emotional brokenness, from pain, and from trauma. But I think my father was in the place where I wanted to be a lawyer when I was younger, and I think I'd be a really good lawyer. But I feel I want more in my purpose and more using my gifts and my natural gifts and talents at being a counselor than being a lawyer. But my dad had a gap, that kind of gap. And I felt it was so important for me to be able to, he's a really calm, gentle, loving man who understood and really listened to what I was saying. There was partly some sadness having to communicate that, but communication is important regardless of who you're going to be talking to. And though I would have wanted him to just kind of know, I mean, I lived 9,000 miles away from him for the last, nearly 20 years. How is he going to grow? The growth that happened in me, he was thousands of miles away and couldn't see that. So it was my responsibility to kind of communicate that. And so I did, and we had a conversation, we talked, and we were able to move through that place. But what that taught me was the importance of talking, the importance of saying what's on our hearts, the importance of not hiding from it, because that something like that could easily have caused a conflict, because I could have taken offense and be bitter or angry and said, how come you didn't know? Because you must know my needs, you must know who I am. People don't know our needs unless we tell them. And there are things that people won't understand and know about who we are unless we tell them. We have to know, understand, accept ourselves enough so that we can communicate that to other people. So that's one lesson. Communication is important. Know what your needs are, know who you are, so you can communicate that to those around you, the people that you love. Another thing is patterns. Patterns repeat. And it's Father's Day, so I thought I'll talk about that, because In my years of working with people, this is something that I see over and over and over again. And it goes back to knowing who we are, because if we don't know and own who we are, what's our inheritance, these patterns will continue to repeat through generations. Is there ever anything that you see in your family that's in your parents' family, and it's repeating in your life, and you may have seen it repeat in your mother's sister's life or your father's brother's life? It's because we're not mindful of the patterns that exist in our families, and so they go throughout generations. They repeat over and over and over because we don't make ourselves become aware of them. So this pattern is less about identity and more about self-acceptance, not ignoring the signs because we're uncomfortable with them. Sometimes we're uncomfortable with certain things that we see, and because we're uncomfortable with it, we don't allow ourselves to face it. We don't allow ourselves to really think about it. I'm going to give you an example. I never made a conscious decision about this, but my husband is exactly like my father. Too many traits like my dad. He is calm, he's chilled, he's a very godly man, he's spiritual, he's a loving husband, he's a loving father. All of those kind of things that are awesome. But also some of the things that really can wind me up is some of those things that my father, the character traits of my father. And that wasn't a conscious decision. But as women, as girls, where do we go to for the mirror that we have? The only mirror we have is our parents, of what the world should look like, of what our choices should be. Sometimes they're the ones that reflect to us our choices, what we should choose, what they should look like. And sometimes there are many people who spend so much time trying to hate their dad, trying to hate who he is and what he became, and make really firm decisions that we're never ever going to be that man, and we're never ever going to choose anybody like him. And what happens is later on down the road we realize that we focus on it so much that that's what we've become, and that's who we've chosen. So our parents are the mirrors through which we see. They kind of give us our worldview. What am I trying to say is, patterns repeat. So if there's something that you see in not necessarily a father biologically, but the people who are primary caregivers in your life, the males who, hey Nads, the males who are primary caregivers in your life, the things that you see in them that you think, I don't really like that, and I see that through too many men in my family, and I don't want to ever become like that, and I don't want to ever marry anybody like that. The best thing to do is to face it, to work through it, because that's the only way it's not going to repeat. If you don't face it and work through it, it's going to repeat. Thanks for the hearts. So sometimes as well, I see this as well, where women are in search of their fathers. And so they make continuous bad choices in men, end up with relationships. Good morning, love you too. End up in relationships that can't serve them, that can't meet their emotional needs, that can't nourish and nurture them. And the cycle of brokenness continue over and over, all because there was no father, there was no dad, there was no father figure, there was nobody who was responsible and who respected and loved and nurtured and looked after them. And because they're in search of that, they end up in so many, lots of broken relationships, lots of patterns of brokenness. Hey Lillian, the best way to address that and to make sure, if you notice that the pattern is repeating in your life, the best way to stop that is to accept and to own that, you know what, there were some things about my dad that wasn't cool. There were some things about him there were some things about my primary caregiver, the males in my life, that wasn't nurturing and respectful, and my relational needs weren't met. My need for security and acceptance and appreciation and comfort was not met by these men. And because I own and accept that these weren't met by these men, I'm going to have to get somebody to walk with me in that journey of fixing that side of me, of helping me to process what that is like and how that's reflecting in my life now, so I can heal from it, so I can grow through it, so I don't repeat those patterns, so that I don't teach my children how to do it, and so that the cycle can stop here with me. It won't happen if we don't own it though. And number 3, I mentioned this before, we become who we focus on. Sometimes there are traits we recognize in our father or primary caregivers that we don't like, we're afraid of, we're scared of it. But because we focus so much on it, that's who we become. So once again, the best way for that to not happen, the best way to avoid repeating the patterns that you see throughout the generations, the best way to not become the side of your father or primary caregiver that you think is not, it's not good, it's not cool, it won't serve you or humanity, is to own it, to look at it, to get somebody to help you walk that process so you can let go of it. Now, I know this is an uncomfortable subject. I know many people wouldn't want to talk about this. I know this is not something that we talk about as big elephants in living rooms that family members ignore. It's not a conversation that you can exactly have with your friend. It's uncomfortable, and this is me on Facebook Live talking about it. But if we don't talk about the uncomfortable things, people stay trapped in brokenness for too long. Patterns repeat throughout generations that could have been stopped. But because everybody is afraid of talking about those uncomfortable subjects, or too many people, I must say, not everyone, too many people are afraid of talking about those uncomfortable subjects, so the patterns repeat through generations. I've seen it too many times. Help too many people process this kind of generational thing, to not know that it repeats, to not know that unless we own the kind of example that we had, the kind of mirror that we had, the kind of man who was saying, come, this is what being a male looks like, or saying to us as girls, come, this is the kind of man you need to look for. Unless we own that was broken, that was damaged, we will repeat the same kind of damage. We will pass it on, and it will move from their generation to ours to the next. And I just think the next generation needs to be protected. We need to be protected. We need to be able to heal and grow through the damage that was caused, the pain that we experienced, so that we can leave a different kind of legacy, so that we can offer something else. If you're reflecting on this and you're listening to it and you think, you know what, that's true, there's some stuff that there's some patterns that was in my family that I see myself doing as a man. There were some patterns in my family there were some patterns in my uncles and my dad that I can see that I've chosen in the man that I'm with today. There were some things that I don't want my sons to inherit. Have somebody walk the journey with you. Process it, heal from it, so you can make different decisions every day. Because you're in it doesn't mean that this is it. And sometimes the devil will lie to you, if you're a man listening to this, telling you that you are your dad and you're never going to change. That's not true. And he will also tell you, that man that you're with, he's just like your father and he is not going to change. That's not true either, because we can change. And sometimes when we change, we can reflect. When we've changed, when we have different kind of boundaries, when we know who we are, when we know what our relational needs are, and when we have a plan in place to meet them, that can change around us, those people that are around us as well. Or we can change enough to make the changes that take us out of those situations and those places. I really hope that you would have got value from this, that it can, there's things here that you can use to help you. Go to my website, woundstoscars.com. There's a whole section there on parenting, on lessons from my father. And there's so much more there that will help you to make this decision, to take this step, to take this journey of beginning to process and heal from anything that is generational that you feel that you need to heal and grow through. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday. It's very, very hot here in Wales, which is like, not what we're used to, but we're enjoying it. So thank you. Have an awesome day and take care. Bye.